Hello and welcome to Youth in Politics. I'm Justin Chenette. While the 2008 presidential election is making headlines, a local race is also making news. In 2007, Congressman Tom Allen announced plans to run against incumbent U.S. Senator Susan Collins. Since then, there have been 8 individuals vying for the 2 slots to go head-to-head in the November general election. There are 6 Democrats and 2 Republicans running for District 1 U.S. Representative. Today's guest is Democratic congressional candidate Chellie Pingree. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the fundamental question. Why are you running for U.S. Representative?
Oh, it's the most important election of our lifetime. I am so concerned about the issues that are facing this country, from the war to the economy to making sure we provide universal access to health care, global warming. I mean, the list is so long, and I actually think this is a tremendous time of opportunity. People are more ready to change than I've ever seen before, politically engaged, and I'm anxious to bring some of the experiences that I've had as a small business owner and an activist in my own community, as well as a state legislator and someone who's done some work in Washington, to really being a part of that change. So I feel privileged to be running right now.
Okay, if elected, you would be the first Democrat woman elected to Congress from the state of Maine. What does this mean to you both personally and professionally?
Well, I have to say about time. You know, I'm again honored to have this opportunity, and you know, Maine has elected Republican women to higher office, and I think we're proud of the fact that we've elected women to office, but we've never done so with a Democrat. I think this is going to be an election where Democrats have an opportunity to be a part of that change. I'm very proud that my daughter, who is now 31, is the majority leader of the House, so she's helping make this a little bit of a family tradition, and I feel like, boy, I better move in there before she takes over the world. So it's a great time, and I think it says a lot to young women. I know having a daughter who's working in politics means a lot to young women who are thinking about what their lives are going to be, and I think having a woman in higher office in Maine would also do the same thing.
Let's turn to specific issues. Most Democrats consider the Iraq War to be one of the worst foreign policy blunders in U.S. history. As a U.S. representative, what would be your plan and strategy for the Iraq War?
Well, I recommend actually that people go to our website, which is ChelliePingree.com, where we put forward our what we call responsible plan to exit Iraq. And part of that was because we wanted to be able to lay out a long-term plan that we probably can't discuss all of it in this program, but it deals with the issues of what we have to do to make sure this doesn't happen again, why it's important to withdraw the troops now, how we bring together some of the countries in that region in a way that we can start rebuilding, and also restoring some of the confidence in America. You know, we've lost a lot of friends around the world, and people don't think very highly of America, so I think it's important to change all that. When I ran for the United States Senate in 2002, it was the beginning of the conversation around the war, and I opposed it then, and it wasn't an easy time. A lot of people advised me politically not to do that, but I thought it was important to speak out then, and I continue to believe, as you said, actually this has been the biggest foreign policy disaster in our lifetime. So I think we shouldn't have gone. We need to end the war now. We need to start bringing the troops home now.
So you support timetables for troop withdrawal?
Well, I would actually like to see our country say we're going to withdraw. I mean, it will take us a while. I think most people say it takes about a month to withdraw a brigade, so it would take, you know, maybe 16 months or a year and a half, really, to bring the troops home safely. But I think until we make that statement to the rest of the world, we're seen, both in Iraq and outside of Iraq, as an intervening force, and we're not able to bring together a political solution as long as we're seen as an occupying force in that country.
John McCain has recently said that we could be in the Iraq War for 100 years or more. What would you say to Republican critics that say pulling out of Iraq too soon would cause the entire region to collapse and eventually fall to the terrorists?
Well, first off, it gives me chills when John McCain says we could be there 100 years. I mean, one, I don't know how he thinks we're ever going to have the troop strength to sustain this or be able to afford it. I mean, it's $400 million a day, and the fact that we could be investing that money here at home on health care and education and rebuilding our infrastructure and rebuilding our own economy. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't believe that staying there is making the situation better. You know, the surge brought us a little bit of a moment where you know, we had said that we were going to try to bring together a political solution. That didn't happen. We're starting to see the chaos begin again, and I think our presence is part of the problem. So I strongly disagree with Senator McCain, and I have to tell you, I don't hear from that many voters out there who want us to stay. They want to know that we're going to have an orderly withdrawal, But I think the fact is there's chaos while we're there, and there's going to be a certain amount of chaos when we leave. Our goal is going to have to be to bring together some of the other countries in that region who have an interest, but most of them won't come as long as we're seen as the occupying force, and as long as we keep saying it's our way or the highway. We're going to have to negotiate a little on this.
Do you support the mission in Afghanistan?
I'm somewhat conflicted about that. I mean, I understand the argument behind finding bin Laden. I'm sorry that we didn't do that in the beginning, and I don't know that we're solving the problem there either. And I don't think we have the troop strength to continue what we're attempting to do over there. And I'm deeply concerned at the talk of an aggressive action in Iran. I don't think we're going in the right direction. I think this is a time to be attempting to make some friends around the world. Not being seen as kind of cowboys who want to go everywhere and take over other regions of the world, when we're not in a position to do that.
How would you handle tyrannical dictators like Mohammad Ahmadinejad of Iran? How would you deal with those type of individuals as a U.S. representative?
Well, I mean, for me as an individual, as a U.S. representative, I have to say, I'll probably have very little chance to sit down at the table and chat with them. But I would like to see a new administration that takes a very different tack on rebuilding our relationships around the world, attempting to negotiate in some of those countries, and also investing in regions of the world where we could be bringing a lot more supporters to bear, as opposed to being the fodder for terrorism in places around the world. I mean, you look at how al-Qaeda has become a presence in Iraq, and most people say it wasn't very strong there before we started giving them reason and argument to sort of build up terrorist forces around the world, and I just want to see us going in the opposite direction.
Do you consider Iran as a country an enemy to the United States?
I'm reluctant to say that. Again, I would like to see us trying to build some bridges there. I mean, Iran has a lot of interest in Iraq being a stable part of that region. I'm not in favor of the kinds of statements that come out of Iran today, or the way that that leader is running his own country. But I also think that this is part of an overall mistake that we've been making in foreign policy really since President Bush took office, and setting up, what we were calling the axis of evil, and, constantly pushing against a part of a region where we could have been making more friends, and now we've created an opening for them to come in and be a very strong force in Iraq as we are losing strength and certainly have less and less power in that region.
Undoubtedly, the #1 issue in this country right now is the economy. Citizens, politicians, and the nation's leading economists are divided over whether the economy is in a recession or simply a slowdown of growth. In your opinion, is this nation in a recession?
I'm not an economist, but like everyone else, I'm looking at the price of gas, the concerns people have about their jobs. I own a small business myself. We own an inn and a restaurant, and, we're watching like everybody else. Are people going to drive to Maine this summer? Are they going to spend as much as they did last year? And we're worried, and I think that's true of a lot of people in Maine who run small businesses, particularly with the seasonal economy. So I consider this a recession, and I am worried about it getting worse before it gets better.
What are you going to do about it as U.S. representative?
Well, good thing I can handle this single-handedly. Well, there are so many things, I think, that we've been, again, going in the wrong direction. I mean, first off, we had a president who started a war and cut taxes. I mean, and in our own fiscal house in the United States, I think we have to roll back the Bush tax cuts. I think we have to look at a much more fair tax structure, which, frankly, puts a little more burden back on the people who've made an incredible amount of money in this economy, and takes a little bit of the burden off the middle class. So I think changing our tax structure is important, regulating some of the financial services industry and the credit markets, which have clearly caused a lot of the financial problems because government wasn't doing its job of oversight. And then I'd like to see some investment in the economy. For me, looking at the state of Maine, I think we could be in a great place to have some actual investment in our infrastructure, in alternative energy, in renewable energies in this state. I mean, here we are with sort of the right place for a green economy, and a few federal dollars would make a big difference. And I would also like to see us do something, and I'm sure we'll talk more about healthcare, but with universal access to healthcare. We don't always see that as just a critical part of the economy, but the fact is, I meet a lot of people in Maine who say their #1 issue is being able to afford the cost of health care. They might be doing okay in their job, but when it comes to affording their health care insurance, that's where they're not able to make a living.